The question presented in this video is whether America is a Christian nation or a secular humanist nation. That is, must the laws of the state and federal government be based on Christianity or the doctrines of moral relativism? But before answering that question, it must be preliminarily identified that without faith, there's no basis for morality, and without morality, there's no basis for law, and there's no getting around that axiom. When a leftist secular humanist suggests that no one moral doctrine should be used as the superior basis for law and policy, that position itself is a moral doctrine that asserts that it itself should be the superior basis for law and policy. It's literally a self-defeating argument. It's a position that constitutes an imperialistic power play. But the evidence shows that not all moral doctrines are equal. From its inception, the United States has always believed that absolute truth must be the foundation for law and policy. In the military arena, a junior officer who is subjected to Article 90 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice is required to disobey orders from commanders all the way up to the president that are immoral. If there was no absolute truth, then how would that military officer determine which orders were immoral and which ones were just? If moral doctrines based on absolute truth matter when it comes to policy decisions in the military sphere, certainly those doctrines also matter in the civilian sector. Furthermore, in his letters from a Birmingham jail, Pastor Martin Luther King Jr. stated that the way that he could tell that a man-made law was unjust is if it conflicts with higher law or divine law. If there is no higher law or divine law, then there's no way to determine which laws are unjust and which ones are valid. If all we have is nature, if nature is all there is, then what's more natural than violence? What is there to stop the strong from eating the weak? This is why governments controlled by atheistic moral relativists, who at their core foundation believe that the ends justify the means, tend to lead to the social marginalization and violent oppression of non-observers of their secular humanist religion. This is because moral relativism naturally produces feelings of unchecked and unaccountable moral superiority. But all of these considerations aside, the question remains, is America a Christian nation or a secular humanist nation? That is, must our laws be based on the private moral code of Christianity, or must our laws be based on the private moral code of secular humanism? There is a final answer. The Supreme Court in Holy Cross versus Trinity in the 1800s conclusively found that America is a Christian nation. However, in 1992, in the Supreme Court decision of Planned Parenthood versus Casey, Justice Kennedy stated in the majority opinion that at the heart of liberty is man's ability to define his own meaning of the universe, which sets forth that America is a secular humanist nation. Justice Kennedy's proverb can be reduced down to each his own, which is exactly what the sign over Buchenwald concentration camp read. So clearly, America is not a secular humanist nation that's based on a philosophy that would lead to things like the Holocaust, but America is not officially a Christian nation either. America is not a nation where Christianity is mandated because it would lead to the very form of legalism that Christ himself was so adamantly opposed to. The final answer is that America is unofficially a Christian nation, and that the state and federal government can base their laws on the moral doctrines of Christianity, but they cannot mandate belief in Christianity or mandate belief in God. For example, man-woman marriage policies do not mandate belief in Christianity. Those policies are secular in that they're not questionably moral, and they're not controversial. They're just policies that promote actual marriage. A man and woman are not obligated to get married in Jesus' name, whereas policies that promote all other forms of marriage are promoting doctrines of secular humanism that are faith-based, controversial, and have a tendency to erode community standards of decency while promoting licentiousness, undermining a litany of governmental compelling interests. It just so happens coincidentally that self-evident morality parallels Christian doctrine. For example, in the Declaration of Independence, the idea that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, which is a principle also reflected in the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, parallels the passages in Genesis where it is stated that all men are created in God's image and are therefore equal. But the 14th Amendment is not unconstitutional under the Establishment Clause. It is not mandating belief in Christianity. It just parallels Christian principle. By coincidence, one of the biggest problems facing the country right now is the failure of government actors to know the differences between secular and non-secular policies. Academic institutions, especially law schools, have failed to teach the differences between what is a secular policy and a non-secular policy. Our nation's current greatest failure is our refusal to treat secular humanism as a religion. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court of the United States and most of the Federal Court of Appeals have repeatedly found that secular humanism is a religion for the purposes of the First Amendment Establishment Clause. It is as if they have forgotten. It is the job of the three branches of government to determine the trajectory of the First Amendment. The First Amendment has several components. One of those is the Establishment Clause. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment states that the federal and state government cannot endorse, respect, promote, or favor one religion over another or religion over non-religion. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution was not merely designed to only prohibit the state and federal government from respecting the edicts and doctrines of institutionalized religions. The Establishment Clause of the First Amendment was designed, if not more so, to prohibit the state and federal government from respecting and promoting the doctrines of non-institutionalized religions. This would include the religion of secular humanism, which has many denominational sects, to include Black Lives Matter, Planned Parenthood, Parenthood and the LGBTQ cult. Large sections of the Democrats' party's platform are patently unconstitutional under the Establishment Clause, and it's time that they be held to account because they aim to excessively entangle our government with the religion of secular humanism, putting religion over non-religion, making it where you cannot disagree with their orthodoxy. That is faith-based, not based on medical science, incredibly controversial, and more likely than not immoral. This is why we've written a bill called the Establishment Act and the Life Appropriation Act, to get the government disentangled with the religion of secular humanism as advocated by the Democrat Party and advanced by the left-wing, dishonest, fake news media. If you want to help restore constitutional order and the rule of law, head on over to specialforcesofliberty.com, download the bill language for the Establishment Act and the Life Appropriation Act for your state, and ask your state representatives and senators to draft, introduce, and enact those bills. And just remember that the final answer is that America is unofficially a Christian nation, and that most of the Democrat Party's platform is unconstitutional because their policies seek to establish the religion of secular humanism as the official religion of our country.